You guys can have a seat. What a good Sunday to be in church. Thank you guys for all being here. Before we get into our teaching, I just want to take a minute and shout out our Crave leader. So right here is actually, this is Ken Vogel. This is my husband, and he is not actually a Crave leader or a core leader. A lot of people think he is. He's around at a lot of our events, but he's not. But he does come in and do fun stuff like this. And I got to tell you guys, for the last 2 summers, Ken has chosen to take vacation so we can have a male chaperone for our mission trips, which is just amazing. So, Ken, you really are a Crave leader. I want to shout out Corey. Corey's been serving in Crave for 11 years, you guys, and he's so uncomfortable right now. Corey has a beautiful family. He serves our church well. And one thing about Corey that the Cravers really like is his muscles, and we call him Core, which he loves. But Corey drives in from Omro not once but twice. Once in the morning on Sunday for church and to serve, and another time Sunday night to come back and serve at Crave. So great. Over here, Kaylin Nichols, she used to be in Crave, and now she's a Crave leader, which is so crazy. And she has a beautiful daughter, Olivia, who was in preschool here at our school last year, and a son, James, who's 2 and really cute and crazy. This is Chris Wise. Apparently, the board of directors wanted to check up on our high school youth group, so we got the chairman. And he's actually been serving in Crave for a decade now, 10 years. And his family has always been, sure, yeah. Thank you. His family has always been a part of Crave, and you'll hear from 2 of his daughters later who are now in Crave, even though they've been a part of Crave since they were 2, I think, Abby? 3, crazy. And then Megan back here, who we all heard about just a few minutes ago. Megan, we're praying for you and with you, and we believe in healing for you. Megan and her husband, Will, started coming to church here when they were dating, and now they've been married for 2 years, and they've got 2 dogs and a cat, just a whole little zoo over at their house. But these leaders show up every Sunday and pour into our high school students, and what they are doing has value, and it matters, and this is why Crave is so important. So our teaching for this morning is going to be one similar that I would give on a Crave night or a core night, and we're going to use some of Crave's lingo. So we're going to talk about haters. So a hater is someone that hates on things or people or anything, and haters are everywhere. They're on TV, they're in your classrooms, right, Cravers, and sometimes they're even in your home. And here's the reality, is that we all have the potential to be a hater. Every single one of us at some point or another, unintentionally or intentionally, has judged people without even knowing who they truly are. And we make character assumptions based on how people look or what they did on the weekend or how they act in class. But in reality, those situations represent a very small portion of their lives and what we know about that person. But there's another person that I think we all have the tendency to hate on as well, and this person means well, and they try to do what's right, even though they constantly seem to fail. And this person, they truly care about people, but they can't seem to stop doing things like picking on their younger siblings or being undependable to a friend. And they have deeper, some darker stuff that not a lot of people know about. And you all know this person pretty well, because this person is you and me. And this brings up a really interesting point about haters, which again includes all of us, is that not only do we tend to hate on ourselves, we tend to hate on ourselves more than anyone else. And I think that there's 2 main reasons for this. And the first one is that we spend more time with ourselves than anyone else. And you can't really escape who you are, what you think, what you do. You are your own 24/7 reality TV show, and you can't turn it off, right? And for better or for worse, we are always with ourselves. And this means that we have plenty of time to get really good at nitpicking ourselves. And the second thing is, while we see kind of these issues in other people with generalities, we see our own issues with the precision of a molecular microscope. And when it comes to you or what you say or do, you're able to see both your actions and your motivators. And our motivations tell us a lot about who we truly are. And also, you hear your own thoughts, right? Spend any amount of time in anyone's head, and you'll discover how messed up they are. And we are no exception to this. So this habit of hating on ourselves can often lead us to this conclusion that if we are personally disappointed in us, myself, then God must be really disappointed in us. Makes sense, right? Because God is perfect. He never makes mistakes. He sees every single part of who we are, what we do, how we think. So clearly, when a perfect God sees how imperfect we are, he's not happy about it. In fact, maybe he's disgusted about it. If we're being really, really honest, this view of God can cause us to believe this, that God is our biggest hater. And I know that this sounds harsh, but for many of us, we really do believe that. And this belief may not seem like it's that big of a deal, but it actually has this huge effect on our faith. We can live each day thinking that God is constantly disappointed in us and in our shortcomings. And sure, we know that technically God likes us, but that doesn't mean, or technically God loves us, but that doesn't mean that he likes us, right? Because how could a perfect God love such an imperfect mess like me? Okay, so now that I have completely killed the vibe in the room this morning, I have some awesome news. And it's this: God is actually not like this at all. Because the truth is that the same God who pushed back on self-righteous critics and stopped them from punishing someone who is technically guilty, the same God who offered grace for someone who is publicly humiliated, is the same God who loves you and I today. So I want to show you what I mean. 2,000 years ago, the Apostle Paul was a rock star of the early church. So he was this legendary leader, teacher, missionary. He was so influential that most of the New Testament, the second half of the Bible, is made up of his writings. So even though today Paul is known as like this amazing, super Christian person, he didn't start out that way. And it would be safe to say that Paul started out as a hater, specifically a hater of Christians. So before he met Jesus, Paul was actually trying to destroy the young church. He was notorious for hunting down, imprisoning, and even killing Christians. But Paul had a personal encounter that changed his heart, and it changed his life. So much so that he dedicated his life to building the church that he once tried to destroy. So once Paul encountered Jesus and realized this true nature of God, it wasn't possible for him to stay the same. So one of the ways that Paul built up the church was by writing letters to church leaders. And these letters were filled with encouragement and instruction and huge insights for new Christ followers. So here's one of those insights taken from his letter to the church in Rome. God's law was given so that all people could see how sinful they were. But as people sinned more and more, God's wonderful grace became more abundant. So Paul is making a huge statement here, and there's two parts to it. So the first part is that the laws of God weren't put in place to make people feel worthless. They weren't given to provide ammunition for haters. The law is there to show us how far we are from perfect and how much we need Jesus, which at first it sounds kind of like depressing, but it's just a lesson in self-awareness. And we all know we aren't perfect, and the law is there to make it clearer for those of us who are living in denial. And the second thing is when we sin, God's grace is always more than enough. And if we find that hard to believe, or if we need proof, we just have to look at Paul himself. Because here was a person whose sole purpose at one point was to destroy the church and stop it from anybody who wanted to follow Jesus. And yet that same Jesus responded to Paul's hate by pursuing him with this relentless grace. That grace exceeded any wrong that Paul had done. So God didn't want to strike Paul down. He didn't want to make an example out of him. He didn't want to pay him back for all of his sins. He wanted Paul to know that no amount of wrong or falling short could keep him from loving Paul. So God responded with grace. And because of that grace, Paul went on to literally change the course of history and our world. So that makes God gracious and not a hater. So Paul goes further with this verse. He says, "Don't you see how wonderfully kind, tolerant, and patient God is with you? Does this mean nothing to you? Can't you see that his kindness is intended to turn you from your sin?" So Paul experienced this firsthand. He had every reason to expect something different. He was an active enemy of God's people. But what he experienced from God was exactly what he wrote about to the church in Rome. So he wrote about how God is better than we imagine. So I have a few examples for us to think of this morning. That when you make a mistake, God is not harsh. He is kind. When you do something that's not good, he is not critical. He's tolerant. When you mess up yet again, he's not angry. He's patient. That's the kind of God we're talking about. And yes, he is perfect, and that also means he loves perfectly. So to sum up what Paul is saying, our bottom line for this morning that you heard about during our vocabulary game is even when you fail, he is for you. Even when you fail, he is for you, which is such a huge relief because our mistakes cannot exceed God's grace. There is always enough. So when we fall short, he isn't just waiting to kind of get on your case and give you what you deserve. Instead, he's cheering for you. God is for you, period. And here's what this perfect God knows, that when we truly understand the depth of his kindness and his grace and his patience and his love, our natural response is to live out of that love that he has for us. So instead of hating on others and hating on ourselves, we can respond with the perfect antidote to judgment, which is grace. Why do we do this? Because we received that same grace from God when we didn't deserve it. So it's one thing to hear that God loves you and he's full of grace for you, but it's another thing to believe it and to own it and live in that reality. It's so much easier said than done. So once we understand how infinitely good God truly is, it is a game changer. This will change the way that you see yourselves, the way that you see God, and the way that you see other people. So how can we move from knowing this truth about God to actually living in light of it? So the answer is both very simple and very difficult. We have to change the way that we think. So when we change how we think, we change the message that we're listening to. So we take all of our misconceptions about God and replace them with his truth. So here's some misconceptions that maybe you have and you can personalize this. So if in your head you hear, God is tired of my mess-ups, replace that with God delights in forgiving me. If you hear, God could never love me right now, replace that with, God has never stopped loving me. If you hear, I've done that too much, I've just done too much, replace that with, I can't outfail his kindness. If you hear, he is disappointed in me, replace that with, he is for me. And what we want you to do is we don't want you to stop there. Create statements about God's truth and make them personal to you. You will never stop being a hater of yourself if our default messages never change. So right now, for real, I want you to take out your phones or a pen and pencil, and I want you to open up your notes app on your phone or take your kid's coloring book and take a corner of their page and write a truth down that God believes about you, that God tells you. Maybe it was one of the ones that I said. But I want you to write this down somewhere, and I want to encourage you to then put this in your pocket or stick it somewhere when you get home. Maybe it's in your car, on your bathroom mirror, or the door frame of your bedroom, or your pillow or something, because we have to listen to the right message, and then we have to see those messages on a regular basis. This can't be a one-time thing where we just hear the truth and move on. We have to continually keep these messages on our radar. So write those truths down somewhere in your phone or write it down on a piece of paper. In a letter to another church, Paul says it this way. He says, we demolish arguments and every pretension that sets itself up against the knowledge of God, and we take captive every thought to make it obedient to Christ. So we don't know this for sure, but I believe every now and again Paul must have struggled with the mistakes that he made in his past, that he must have wrestled with the decisions, if he was worthy to do the work that he felt called to do. So it's possible that Paul wrote this with himself in mind, knowing that it was easy for him and others to slide into this hater mode. So take captive every thought and make it obedient to Christ. He writes, reminding himself and us that there's nothing more epic or important than God's love for us. And we know that because of what Christ did for us, and nothing we can do can undo his love. So have any of you ever sent your dog to like obedience training classes or tried to train him yourself? It is a lot of work. I have to tell you, Ken and I got a Labradoodle puppy on Memorial Day weekend. His name is Toby. And well, I guess we thought we were getting a puppy. I think it's a baby T-Rex in a dog costume that bites a lot. Just ask any of the Cravers who've been over to our house recently. You don't just tell our dog to sit once. You have to keep telling him, right? Let's put Toby back up on this screen. I think that's why God makes puppies so cute, so you don't keep them at obedience class, right? So we can't just tell Toby to sit once and he gets it. We have to tell him over and over and over and then remind him. And we have to use signals and sounds and treats to keep him on track. And I'm pretty sure we failed our puppy class and we have to go back. We have to do different things to keep us on track. And Paul is saying that our thoughts work the same way. We need to train them to be obedient to Christ's message. So take these new messages and place them where you will see them. Maybe you can use a dry erase marker and write it on your mirror in your bathroom. If you drive, put the note on your dashboard. Do whatever you have to do to see the truth often. No matter which route you take to get these messages front and center, you have to get it front and center so you can start to change how you see God and his view of you. So I want us to remember one huge absolute truth this morning is God's love for us is limitless. You can't measure it. You can't erase it. You can't earn your way into it. You can't fail your way out of it. Because even when you fail, he is for you. And that's how grace works. And when we receive this grace, we'll stop acting like haters towards ourselves and towards others. And this is what we try to do in Crave. We try to encourage one another to not compare and hate on one another because we all know that comparison is the thief of joy. Some of our Cravers are going to share now about how Crave has helped them and how just what they get out of Crave. And maybe if you're a high schooler here who's not yet connected to a youth group, maybe this will inspire you to be a part of Crave. All are welcome. So we're going to start with Abby.
Hi, I guess. I'm Abby. I'm a freshman. Thank you. And, well, as you know, being the daughter of the great Chris Wise, I've always really been in Crave and always knew the Crave kids. And they always, I always thought of them as like fun and nice, and they were like always friends, and that was super cool. And looking back, that's like the main part of what made me want to go to Japuza this summer on our mission trip, and just the tight bond that we had in our little group that went, and just you could just see the bond between all the people who were at Japuza. It was just astonishing. It was just like, wow. And like to think that I could be going to a youth group that doesn't have like that family to it, like that would really stink. I don't think I could really like feel the way I feel about God that way, and it just makes me feel so genuinely accepted even if I am like a little freshman.
Thanks, Abby. We're going to hear from Claire next.
Hi, my name is Claire, and I'm going into my freshman year at Appleton West, so I haven't really gotten a chance to be with Crave yet, but I was able to go on our mission trip to Japuza. And that was a really great experience. There's, on our first morning there, Teal, who was our guide there, he led us in a game that I really learned a lot from. He split us into teams and had each team build the very tallest tower that they could. But the twist was that each team was given different materials. One team got 20 cups that were big and easy to stack, while another team just got paper and rubber bands. I guess it was inevitable that the team with the big cups won. So the game that we played was an analogy for life. Some people are born into a family that loves them and adores them, while other people are looked at as a mistake. Some people learn complicated things easily, while other people have a hard time just reading and writing. But people don't get to choose whether they have these things. Some people are simply born with more advantages than others. The whole point of this was that you can never look at a person and judge them based on things like their looks, car, job, house, appearance, or anything, because you have no idea what they've been through or how hard their life might have been. Learning this forced me to realize that I have been guilty of this a lot before. I've looked at people begging on the streets and I've thought, just get a job. I've thought that kids who got bad grades just didn't pay attention. But the truth is that these judgments are not fair to make. One of my favorite quotes says, "Be kind, for everyone is fighting a battle that you know nothing about." I think that the world would be a much more compassionate and accepting place if everyone kept that in mind. Everyone did that very well at JAPUSA, and that made it a very peaceful and welcoming environment. I am so thankful for the experience.
Thanks, Claire. Jaden's going to share.
Hi, my name's Jaden. I'm going to be a senior this year. And Crave for me has been one of the main reasons why I've made it this far in high school. Going into freshman year, I figured that it was going to be fairly similar to middle school and was hoping it'd go fast. So my main reason for joining Crave was to see friends that I previously went to school with each week. But when freshman year started, it was a total culture shock. I was surrounded by nothing but negativity. So Crave became more than just a place where I could hang out with friends. It became a place where I could learn how to deal with problems that were going on with school and how to deal with it. So Crave really means a lot, and I don't know what I'd do without it. And I'd really like to thank Sarah for all she does. She puts in so much time and effort just to help us kids out. So thank you, Sarah.
Thanks, Jaden. Emily's going to share next.
Hi, I'm Emily. I'm going to be a senior. And Crave is a huge part of my connection with God. We were never meant to do this life alone, and I believe that fellowship is crucial to any person's faith. My fellow Cravers are truly my family, and I love them. I never could do high school without them. We love each other, and we laugh at each other, and get this, we interact with each other outside of church because we know that the fellowship we have here should extend far beyond the grounds of this church and into our schools and our neighborhoods. I like to think that as Christian high schoolers, we are on the front line of battle when it comes to shaping the Big C Church. We see firsthand how hurting our schools and communities are, how dark and sad and fearful they can be at times. Crave is our home base. Every week we come to recharge and get ready for the week ahead of us, a week of fighting not only for ourselves but for our peers. Secular society may have blurred the accessibility to Jesus, but there's an obvious desperation for him out there. In fact, I did some research because I'm a professional student. I like to consider myself. And I found out that my peers and I wonder about universal beings 10% more than our parents do. God has set a longing for himself in our hearts, and especially in the hearts of his youth, and that's why Crave is so important. In fact, over half of the consistent members of Crave aren't members of New Hope. They're friends that we have recruited to join the fight against the constant darkness of this world. And when we bring ourselves together, we create one loud-talking, food-devouring, Jesus-loving mega friend group, and it's honestly one of the most remarkable things I've ever experienced.
We're going to hear from one of those friends right now who was invited to Crave.
So when I first transitioned from middle school to high school, I changed a lot of who I am and the friends that I had. It took me a while to rebuild my friend groups, and one of the first people that I befriended after coming to Neenah High was fellow Craver Jersey Pop. Through her, I made many more friends at Neenah High and was invited to come to their youth group, Crave. And since then, I may spend a little more time with other friends, but no group feels more like family than these individuals here. Even on top of that, the lessons learned here, the teachings about God and our fellow ministry, is something that's it's remarkable. There's no other place that can personalize lessons, no other person that can reach you individually more than Sarah and the leaders here. And every person here has your best interests at heart. It's something that I value highly in my life and hope to keep on coming to, maybe even after graduating, for a very long time.
Thanks, Evan. I promise you guys I did not pay them to say any of this stuff. Our last Craver, Matthew, is going to share.
Hi, I'm Matt, and I'm an incoming sophomore at Neenah High School, which means I also this week I start a very scary process called driver's ed. Pray for me and my family, please. One of the things that I absolutely love about Crave is we all want to be here. I mean, one thing that I didn't really like about middle school youth group is some of the kids, their parents force them to come. And I feel different when I'm at Crave because we all want to be here. I mean, some of the parents force them to come here, but they like it anyway. But anyway, when people want to come freely, it makes it feel like a second family to me, and that's what I always enjoy about coming back.
Thanks, Matthew. Can we thank them this morning? You guys are beautiful people, and Steve and Emily said it this morning, but this generation is our future, and the future is now, and I gotta tell you, the future looks good. The future looks really good. So our youth group was named Crave simply for its dictionary definition. Crave means to yearn for, to desire, and to long for. And Crave is a group of teenagers that longs for and yearns and desires for more of God. And when we do that together with Jesus as our focus, we are free to be ourselves, free to be me, free to be you, free to be us. And so I'm going to ask you guys to please stand with us as we join in singing that truth this morning.